is a person with a love of lifelong learning, which has provided her with career opportunities to explore the world from both an individual perspective and a systems perspective, including journeys to Europe, Australia, and the Middle East. She now spends her time exploring current and future world possibilities in both fiction and nonfiction as a full-time writer. Her adult fiction is written under the name Maggie Jaimeson and includes titles in romance, suspense, paranormal, and science fiction. Her young adult titles are under the name Maggie Fair, where she's working on a 7-book fantasy series. Her nonfiction titles are written under the name Maggie Lynch.
And it is hard to keep myself straight.
Who are you writing?
I'm reading from this book, but unlike the others, I have to read from a piece of paper where I've enlarged the font. So otherwise, I will just trip over every single word. This is romantic women's fiction. What that means is that there's romance as the core of the story, but that it's really an exploration of a woman's journey to find herself. And I tend to deal with horrible issues because I just like torturing my characters. Just because there's a lot of issues in the world. So this particular book actually, the underlying story is an examination of rape and how both the victims and the people around them react. So not wanting to make you cry, I'm going to read from the center of the book, where instead of the primary character, Rachel, who suffered a really horrible, horrible rape, there's a 16-year-old girl named Kat, who had her first unwanted sexual experience a month ago. And like many teens, she entered into it with stars in her eyes, and when she wanted out, the guy didn't stop. Now she's missed her period, and she's sure she's pregnant. So that's where we're starting. The farther she drove, the more she was sure she was pregnant. Every time her stomach gurgled, she was sure it was sperm swimming around in her body, attacking her eggs. His unwanted, ugly, sticky, condomless grossness had deposited an alien baby in her, or maybe more than one. She felt like Ripley in Alien Resurrection. She shuddered at the thought. She noticed a Walgreens, the perfect place. None of her friends would ever be caught dead in a boring Walgreens. She made a left across traffic and pulled into the parking lot. Her pulse raced so fast she could hardly stand it. Maybe she'd get lucky and have a heart attack before anyone found out the truth. She could already see the headlines. 17-year-old girl dies of heart attack. Mother devastated to learn of undisclosed pregnancy. Display of balloons and flowers with greetings like "Congratulations" and "Get well" assailed her as she walked into the drugstore. Kat marched past all the fun stuff directly to the shelves of medical-type things. She steeled herself, searching for the tests. Passing a shelf of maxi pads, she almost cried. Would she ever need maxi pads again? She prayed that she would, and soon. Her hands shaking, she stared. She was such a virgin, or had been until Chris. She saw condoms. Oh God, why couldn't he at least use one of those? She moved to the next aisle. It looked more promising. Ointments for yeast infections, douches, KY jelly, half the stuff she'd never seen before. Geez, what was wrong with just using soap down there? She looked behind boxes, stood on her toes to search the top shelf, got to her knees to scour the bottom shelf. No pregnancy tests. Didn't they come in clearly labeled boxes that were easy to see? Soon she was at the end of the aisle, at the back of the store by the pharmacy desk. Oh my God, this was embarrassing. Could she ask for one? What if it was under lock and key? What if they required ID or a doctor's note? May I help you? A young woman asked. Yes, Kat said. She unclenched her fists and pasted a smile on her face. I can't seem to find the pregnancy tests. My husband and I have been trying for so long. She crossed her fingers behind her back. And I missed my period, and well, we really hope this time it worked. She was sure the pharmacist could easily see through her lie. She hoped she didn't break out in a sweat in the next few minutes. Here, let me show you. We have them near the baby display. The woman came around the corner and pointed Kat 2 aisles down. Kat followed her, placing one foot in front of the other as if she was walking to the gallows. Here they are. There's quite a variety. Did your doctor recommend a particular one in the past? No. I mean, I can't remember. It's been a while since I haven't been to him yet. We wanted to be sure first, you know, not be disappointed. Oh, please, God, don't strike me down with lightning just now. Just let me know if you have any questions. The pharmacist smiled and patted her shoulder, then finally left Kat alone with the shelves of colorful boxes. Some of them pictured a happy couple holding a baby. Others had a kind of artsy line drawing of a woman. Kat held her smile tight until the woman was well around the corner. Then she sagged against the shelves. There were far too many choices. Geez, can't I get a break? Just 3 possibilities would have been enough. How should I know which one will be the most accurate? She examined all the pregnancy tests. They all had names that indicated you could find the answer right away, like first response, confirm 1, day 7. Some required you to pee in a bottle and then dip in a stick. Others you peed directly on the stick. At the moment, she wasn't sure if she'd ever be able to pee again. She read the back of each box carefully. They all seemed to indicate similar results and worked for early detection within the first month. It didn't take long to decide she'd rather just pee on a stick. Less stuff to keep track of and discard. Probably take less pee, too. She took her choice to the counter and pasted her smile on again for the pharmacist who had helped her. The woman scanned it into the register. That will be $14.95. Kat handed her a 20. Money she'd withdrawn from her savings account. Money she was supposed to be saving for college. Her palms were so sweaty she was pretty sure they would turn green from the money. The woman put the test kit in a paper bag and handed Kat her change. I hope you're pregnant. Have a nice day. But Kat didn't wait to hear. Tearing out the door, she ran to the car, popped the keys into the ignition, and went in search of a bathroom. McDonald's or a Carl's Jr. would be best. They always had clean restrooms. She remembered a Carl's Jr. just up the road. She sped through the next 2 lights as they turned yellow and careened into the parking lot. She jumped out of the car and flew into the restaurant, heading straight for the bathroom. She slammed the stall door shut, dropped her jeans, and tore open the packet. Her hands shook as she read through the directions. She had to follow them exactly. Just as she finished peeing on the stick, she brought her hand forward and the stick bumped against her thigh. Startled, she let it go and it dropped in the toilet. No! She wailed as if she were dying. Kat? Oh my God. She knew that voice. She choked down the sob, clenching her teeth to make sure no sound came out. Kat? Are you okay? It was Rachel. What was Rachel doing all the way down in Gresham? Maybe if she didn't say anything, she would go away. Maybe she would think she was mistaken. She heard a knock on the stall door. Kat, what's wrong? Oh crap, oh crap, could things get any worse?
And now, Athena. Murder of Crows, which Athena is going to read from, is her first published novel. And I just have to add inside here, you would never, ever know that in the next one, but it's so good. She lives a life of adventure and bliss, rich in friends and family with a spicy dose of chaos. Her passions include travel, photography, scrapbooking, scotch, and storytelling, preferably all with chocolate.
So I write fantasy fiction, and the story that I'm reading from is a set of 9, and it's about the Greek muses being born into our modern world to rescue us from the dark age of our loss of creativity. So where I'm starting out, since we have exactly 5 minutes, and I will do my best to stay exactly at 5 minutes, is the end of chapter 7, rolling into chapter 8. So. When Fable reached for her purse, picking up the tab to walk to the register, Abra left her cash on the table and ducked around the corner of the building. Checking to see she was alone, she rolled the long sleeves of her hoodie up to her elbows, revealing intricately woven, interlocking tattoos with crows on her left arm, making the skin almost completely black, and a single raven on her right inner forearm. She pulled a pocket knife from her jeans and flipped it open. With tender precision, she dug the blade into the eye of a raven tattoo. Blood gushed down her knife, splatting in fat drops on the pavement. Her tattoo bulged, shifting and stretching, the ink ballooned outward, pulling flesh and peach-fine hair away from Abra's arm as the creature took shape. His feathery body emerged from her arm like a malignant blister, swelling, contorting. She groaned and leaned against the building, reaching her arm up for the indentured raven, Tassos, to be birthed. He took shape in fits and starts, his head, neck, and the ridge of his body. At last his wings burst free of her flesh, spraying a fine, bloody mist back at her as he burst free from her skin. He lurched skyward with the sound of silken feathers and a ragged caw. Tassos perched on a nearby phone cable and turned for instructions. Abra panted. Sweat broke out on her forehead. She tasted the copper of her own blood on her lips as she turned the knife blade, cutting into her left arm. Chapter 8, Murder of Crows. I left the Glade Cafe in the early afternoon. I'd been there for nearly 4 hours. Even though I'd eaten more food than I would at 2 Thanksgiving dinners, I was still hungry. I wondered as I paid my giant tab if I'd contracted a stomach worm. That was a lot of breakfast, the waiter said as he rang up my check. How was it? It was delicious. I suddenly couldn't remember what it tasted like. My Aunt Celeste mentioned this place to me a while back, I said. As I checked out, she said I should check it out. She liked coming here to write. She was Earl Grey with cream and sugar, he asked, right? Yep, that was her, I said. A wave of loss washed over me. I'm Gabe, he offered his hand. Fable. I hope we get to see you around more, Fable. Oh, I'll be coming back and tell my friends about you too. Please do, he said. For the first time, I noticed his long, dirty blonde dreadlocks pulled back in a ponytail emphasized his alabaster skin and angularly beautiful features. Whiskey-colored eyes and slender limbs brought to mind the sudden hallucinogenic idea that he was not a man at all, but cleverly disguised as a cafe owner with fluid grace and flawless beauty. He must indeed be a fairy king or some otherworldly creature of fantastic origin. Would you like your card back, he asked with a smile that seemed to include slightly pointier teeth than before. I hesitated, my brain somersaulting between fiction and reality, knowing I was a woman in a cafe in Portland, and yet feeling like I was also simultaneously standing on mystical alien turf. You okay, he asked. I blinked and took the card from his fingers, which seemed too long and slender to be real. Yeah, thanks. You have a good day then. It was nice to meet you. Had he really been waiting on my table for 4 hours and I never noticed? I blinked again. He turned away with an odd look over his shoulder, and just as quickly, he seemed perfectly human again, strangely beautiful, but human anyway. I shook my head, gathering up my purse and the stack of papers I brought to read. I printed all the pages created on my laptop in the last 3 days, and the printout came to a staggering 240 pages. I couldn't believe it. The worst part was I could barely remember it. It was like a fuzzy dream or an opium haze. Maybe that's why the waiter seemed so unreal, I thought. I'm sleep deprived. Just to prove it, I glanced at him one more time as I walked out the door. He was already helping another table, his back turned. Leaving the cafe gave me the strange sensation I was parting with an old friend. Stepping out onto the sidewalk, several drops of rain speckled the pavement. I gripped the loose manuscript to my chest, wishing I had thought to put it in a backpack before leaving the house. It was only 10 blocks home, so I started to speed walk, determined to get back before the full rain began. As I was about to round the corner of the building, a voice behind me shouted, "Miss, you forgot your sweater." Everything happened at once. Chaos. From around the corner of the building, a flock of crows burst outward like black and crimson cannon confetti. They swooped in a mass toward the road. Then, as if by some practiced carnival trick, they veered in unison, like a deadly cloud, directly toward me. My nightmare of the crows flashed through my mind, and Auntie Celeste's voice rang out, "Hold your ground," in my head. But human instinct took over. With the weight of black feathers and screaming beaks bearing down upon me, I stumbled sideways and lunged toward safety, a gap between two parked cars, and then the freedom of the road. In my panic, I darted between the cars and into oncoming traffic. I had enough time to see the grill of the number 17 bus as it was about to end my life. In slowed time, I registered the panicked horror on the driver's face behind the flat panel window and heard the horn blare, brakes screeching, and then a tremendous weight slammed into my body.
So I'm next, and I'm going to ask you to read my book.
Read your own.
A little weird.
Okay. Ripley Patton lives in Portland, Oregon with 1 cat, 2 teenagers, a man who wants to live in a boat. She is an award-winning short story writer and also author of the PSS Chronicles, a young adult paranormal thriller series. While living in New Zealand for 5 years, Ripley founded
Specfic
NZ, the National Association for Writers of Speculative Fiction in and from New Zealand. She was also an active member of Board Universe, the Northwest Independent Writers Association, and teaches workshops on flash fiction, guerrilla marketing, and crowdfunding.